We allowed a piece of behavior to define the whole person, and that is not helpful. It's a person who has a behavioral problem, not the other way around. In short, a sex offender is someone who has committed a sexual offense. In other words, breaking the laws of Canada and Western society, which have defied certain cultural standards and beliefs about sexual conduct. So breaking a law should not really define the person. And the problem we've gotten into is that because somebody is brought in front of the court and is a sex offender, we then think of that person and sort of paint that person in a certain light, forgetting that there is actually a dozen or so, at least, clear distinctions to start with about the type of sexual offenses people commit. And if you were to start teasing apart each of those types of offenses, you start to see different patterns, you start to see, different issues with that person. There is no one profile that matches a sex offender. We cannot look at somebody and absolutely come up with a character analysis or any type of testing, that would work for every single sex offender. Sex offenders are very, very much diverse in their socioeconomic status and their personalities. But the one thing is that we do know that it is primarily a gender-linked problem, because about 96% of sex offenders are male. So there's something about maleness and sex offending that is pretty much a pattern. But beyond that, there's a lot of diversity. What we've looked at are the risk factors that, number one, may predispose someone to committing a sexual offense at some point in their life. And those risk factors tend to accumulate through childhood experiences. We don't think that people are necessarily genetically predisposed, for example, to be an offender of any type. Certainly there are characteristics of people that may put them more at risk, physical characteristics from birth and so on. But what we know in terms of predisposing factors are things like childhood experiences that might have affected the way they look at their own self-concept, their self-worth. So, for example, many of the offenders that I work with experienced teasing and bullying, interesting enough, as a child. And we know that can be traumatic, in some cases, in terms of their ability to develop normally and have a good sense of functionality in society. So if you're being teased, the message is you don't fit in, you're different. Shame issues, guilt issues, whatever. And those are really prevalent, with many of our guys. There's usually problems in the family with attachment to one or both parents, family dynamics such as someone having drug problems, alcohol problems, or an absent parent, a father who may have abandoned their children or his children at some point. Really has an impact on the maturity of a young person. So those types of factors seem to be, in the experiential realm of many of our sex offenders. Abuse, there's abuse in many forms, but we're always more keen to look at sexual abuse because we think that someone who's being sexually abused might have started to rearrange their values and their thinking around sex for the rest of their life. Now, you would think that someone who's being sexually abused or been victimized himself would never want to hurt anybody else. But in fact, a couple of things could happen. One is, distorted views that grow up, well, it happened to me and I made it through, so, my victim is going to be okay. They're not going to really be harmed from it. Missing the fact that, that person was affected by the abuse. There were issues in their life that they're not aware of because they never had treatment for it. We also know that many of our offenders have trouble with empathy issues. So being able to put themselves in the position of someone else and knowing how they feel, how they experience hurt, and so on. Well, somebody has at some point in their own life decided that I just don't want to feel my hurt anymore. They're not going to be really sensitive to the pain of others. They sealed it off from themselves. They dissociated that, so they're going to have low empathy for others. So those are some of the predisposing risk factors that we're going to be keen to pick up on and help a person, not because they're excuses for what they did as an adult, but they are some of the roots and the foundation, that this person has in their own personality development that need to be examined and put in place, resolved to some degree. And we can do that in therapy. A person who commits a sexual offense made a choice. They may not necessarily be as conscious of the choice process that they went through, and that's what we as therapists are trying to do. But they made a choice. Nobody put a gun to their head and said, you have to do this. So understanding the motives of the choice is really what therapy is all about, and helping people make better choices in the future. That's all there is to it. Why do people make sex offense? Why do people make the choice to sexually offend? Oscar Wilde, made an interesting comment at one point. He said, the only way to get rid of temptation is to yield to it. Sadly, some people have yielded to their temptations and, committed that offense. But who amongst us should cast the first stone when it comes to making wrong choices in our life? We're all guilty, or we're all complicit in making wrong choices, whether it's something to do with our knowing, that smoking is going to harm us and continuing to smoke, knowing that overeating, knowing that whatever, knowing that being disrespectful and rude to our partner, it is not helpful to our relationship. All those things are about human behavior and ultimately the choices that we make to address our needs. So helping people to meet needs in a healthy way is the state of the art, and that's what therapy is all about. We're talking about a problem of somebody meeting a human need that we all have, or human needs. Only they met them in an illegal, illicit, deceitful, and harmful way. So they have real human needs. How can we give them the means to get those needs met in a healthy way rather than an unhealthy way? So encouraging people is really about having them overcome a lot of obstacles, maybe poor skills, social skills, and being able to meet and date women, for example, or feeling disadvantaged in terms of being able to get a good job, having anchors in their life, and having supports from others. We tend to do things to sex offenders as a society that go against the best tenets of therapy. The last thing a sex offender needs to be is socially isolated. By posting their name on the internet, for example, we drive sex offenders underground. We try to keep them hidden somewhere rather than joining in the mainstream of society so they can overcome their problems by fitting in society and getting their social needs met. So there are some ways that really run counter to helping sex offenders, that we're increasingly introducing. The whole idea of putting ankle bracelets on for someone who's already felt a lot of shame in their life by overemphasizing control methods that just bring them further shame. How are they going to overcome the problems, that will lead them to having a successful life and fulfilling relationships? So to encourage them, it is mainly not just saying keep being motivated, because it isn't really, that they aren't motivated. It's just to stick to it. Don't give up. We want to stop abuse. We want our offenders to be ambassadors out there in the belief that the harm of children that sex abuse causes has to stop, or the harm of any victims.